Alrighty, there we go. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a Learning and Growing webinar on improving student help seeking through connection and belonging. Our presenter today is Professor April Crenshaw of Chattanooga State Community College. My name is Sidra and I'm your moderator today for Hawks Learning. We will have a live Q&A session after the presentation, so please enter any questions you have into the Q&A module as we go, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end. I'll now hand it over to our presenter.
Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for the delay and the technical difficulties, but I am April Crenshaw, and I am an associate professor at Chattanooga State Community College. I've been working with at Chat State for 16 years. I'm teaching mathematics for 18, and I'm here this afternoon to share with you some strategies that I've used to help promote student help seeking through connection and belonging. Now, CJ, I'm not sure on my end whether or not my screen is showing, because from my view, I see myself in my background. So I take the thumbs up. Okay, thank you so much. So our overview today, I just want to define academic help seeking, talk about the help seeking dilemma and the results from a 2019 study, define belonging, share with you the strategies and the impact, share some student messages with you, see what questions you might have, and then talk about some next steps that I have going on with my colleagues at Chattanooga State. Okay, thank you all for confirming that for me in the chat. Okay, so academic help seeking has been defined as the process of exploring or utilizing resources beyond oneself to obtain information. So help seeking for students is, we can anything from when they come to our office hours, if you all have a tutoring lab or some kind of help center or tutoring center when they go there, but even when they look up information on Google or YouTube, for me as a math instructor, when they use Khan Academy or Math for You, mathispowerforyou.com is one that we send them to often. Even their math apps and so forth, Mathways are considered to be academic help seeking. The issue is, I don't know if you all have this, but I'll share, in the 18 years that I've been teaching, I have yet to have a 100% pass rate in any of my classes. And so I hope this is a safe space and that you all won't take that information and publicize it, but I have still chasing that 100% success rate. Because even for the students, and I'm not talking about the ones that we may have that just do not come to class, but the ones who are there and maybe with me from the start of the semester to the finish, that still don't quite make it. And a lot of times it's those students, they're there and it's not that, you're not reaching out to them, you're not paying special attention, you're not saying, hey, come see me, let's work on this, let's talk about this. That there aren't opportunities for help seeking, but we find that those that need it the most are often the ones who avoid help seeking. Okay, and so that's a dilemma. Students need help. I've been doing it for 18 years and have not yet been able to put a C or better sent to the records office for my students. But I have this issue where students avoid help seeking. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind sharing in the chat, if I'm not alone in what I've shared, if you wouldn't mind sharing some reasons that your students, if that's a dilemma and issue for you, what are some reasons that your students avoid help seeking if you've ever run into that situation? Okay, so I see embarrassed, time. Thank you. Is it Margie? I never had 100% pass rate either. I see someone 20 minutes up the road in Cleveland, afraid of being judged, work, don't want the teacher to know that they've been lost, apathy, okay. Difficult lives, don't want to feel stupid, math anxiety, okay. And I will agree, all of those things. My biggest, well, I won't say the biggest, one of the biggest things, two biggest things that I see in there that I've experienced with my own students is time. Okay, the time constraint. I'm at a community college and almost all of our students are going to school and working at the same time. And then the fear of embarrassment. And I have something that I have to share with you at the end that I thought was funny with regard to students' fear of embarrassment. It was something that I said, and they played it back to me. So I have that to share with you. Okay, so here's a picture of what Kara Bennett and others graph for us to help us visualize this help-seeking dilemma. Would anyone share what's interesting or what you observe in this graph? On our x-axis, we have students' anticipated grade, so it goes from D to A. And on our y-axis, they transform those y values into log frequencies, but still it goes from 0 to 2, and it's the amount of help seeking that the students participate in. So on the x-axis, we have their anticipated grades. On the y-axis, they have the students help seeking. Any observations there? So someone said the A's don't think they need help, okay? The people who need it the most don't come for help. And who would we, arguably, who would we say are the students who would need it the most? Okay, another observation said the A and B students tend to ask for help. Highest is B, okay? So if a student is anticipating that they might make an A or B, it might, we could understand that if you're expecting to make an A or B in the class, well, you might not be first in line to come for help. But if your anticipated grade is between a D and a C, and in a lot of cases, a D is not passing. So if your expected grade is C or below, you would think that you would be, amongst the first in line to getting help because you're not anticipating doing well in the course. But if we look over here at the graph, those anticipating making a D, really aren't out seeking much more help than those anticipating making somewhere between a B+ and an A. And that's concerning, that for those who aren't even anticipating doing well in the course, you're not first in line to get help. It's those B students, those students expecting somewhere to make between a C, that C and B-. That's where the vertex, the peak of the curve is. And so it's those students that are coming for the most help. Okay. So there was a 2019 study done by Dr. Irvin China, the student at Georgia State at the time, that sought to see if he could kind of explain this student help seeking. Now I have the link for the full study for those of you who might be interested in the survey instruments and the hierarchical linear modeling that he did to run his analysis and everything. But I just provide here for you the outcomes of that study, because I found those to be very, very interesting. So what he found in his study for factors affecting student help seeking were that older students, and I'll phrase this right, or phrase it according to the study, is that with older students, there was less avoidance of help seeking. Okay, so avoidance of help seeking is bad. And so less of something that's bad is good. So the way the study was set up, it didn't say it was more help seeking, but less avoidance of help seeking. So help seeking. So want to phrase it the way the study was done. So older students displayed less avoidance of help seeking. Students who identified as female, okay, displayed less avoidance of help seeking. On the survey instrument that was used, students who had a more positive attitude towards math displayed less avoidance of help seeking. And then students who felt that their professor cared, what was called professorial concern, who reported greater instances of professorial concern where they felt that their professor cared about them, exhibited less avoidance of help seeking. So when I read those results and I was thinking about my own work, there's nothing I can do about a student's age. There's nothing I can do about a student's, their sex or their gender. And at this point, I've told my students I've given up on trying to convert students, or those who come and say they hate math. I don't try to convert them anymore. All I do is promise them that by the end of our time together, you'll be able to do math better at the end than you were able to do at the beginning. And if you still hate it at the end, that's okay. I'm just here to help you improve your skills. So if I can influence math attitudes and make them more positive, that's great. If I can't, ultimately that's not the goal. Okay, but the professorial concern piece, does the professor care? Is the professor warm? Is the classroom inviting? Do I feel like the professor cares about me? Do I feel like the professor is interested in my learning? Those questions off that instrument just screamed belonging for me. And I take us to this definition. There are lots of definitions of belonging. They all pretty much encapture the same thing, but this is one of my favorites. And for school belonging, this idea of respect, acceptance, inclusion, and support. And so if we can do things in the classroom that help students feel respected, accepted, included, and supported, then that goes back into this idea of professorial concern. And the study said that, well, when students perceive that we care, they exhibited fewer instances of avoidance of help seeking, or had lower instances of help seeking avoidance. And so that's what we're after. The point is we want the students to come for us for help. And so the study said, well, let them know that you care. And a part of that is making sure that they feel respected, accepted, included, and supported. So if you will, I'd like to quickly share just some strategies that have helped me in that regard when I'm specifically thinking about this idea of professorial concern and trying to promote help seeking for my students. Okay. And the first is I changed the way I did office hours. I started keeping track, and I changed using Calendly back in August, but I had rebranded from office hours to student support hours several semesters back. But it was just this August that I started having students use Calendly appointments. And some would say, well, isn't that turning more students away if they have to make an appointment? And I found that it actually did not. And the idea for making the appointments, when I thought of it in the first place, was just thinking about the things that we make appointments for, the things that I make appointments for. When I make an appointment for something, it's very intentional. When I make an appointment for something, I have to sit down, I have to look at my schedule, and I have to set aside time for that appointment. It's not just a, well, I might, or I might not, or I'll see how it goes. When I had the opportunity to be with you on this afternoon, I had to look at my calendar and set aside that time to make sure that it happened. And I had that same thought about student hours. When we were just required to kind of sit in our office and host open office hours on the chance that a student might drop in and they might not. And we post those hours and say, hey, just drop in if you can, or drop in when you want to. I was mostly in the office by myself. But when I switched and had students, gave them times throughout the week and had them intentionally make appointments to be with me, you'll see in a few slides, just hearing a little bit, that drastically changed the number of students that I met with and was able to help. So one of the changes is you're not coming to office hours, you're coming to student support hours. I still do have drop-in hours, but the bulk of the hours that are available are through a Calendly appointment. I make that link available to you, and then you schedule your appointment to have your one-on-one time with me. Something that was offered at Chattanooga State just this fall semester was we had a grant and some money to have what we call embedded learning assistants in several of our courses. So in the first 7 weeks, I requested to have a learning assistant in my online pre-calculus algebra course. Now let me back up and say that I'm also a doctoral student. I just started, I'm officially completed my first full year this week, actually. So I started this time last year, and to help me with the transition, I requested a virtual schedule in the fall, and I was granted that by our VP, which I was very appreciative of. And so I had a completely online schedule in the fall. So we had learning assistants embedded in our on-ground courses, and I asked for one in my online pre-calculus course. And so what my online learning assistant did was that person had access to the course, no student grades or anything like that, but had access to the email list and could make postings in the course just like I could. So she, at the start of each week, I had her send a word of encouragement to students. That's something I normally would do. I had her do that for me. At the middle of the week, I had her to post again, inviting students, hey, I'm here, remember these are my hours. I'm happy to work with you, wanting to work with you. Come see me if you're having any problems, with anything. And then we took my schedule of support hours and built her schedule of support hours to complement mine. So on the days that I had early morning hours, she would host evening hours. On the days that I had evening hours, she would host morning hours. And so basically we had the students covered Monday through Friday, morning, afternoon, and evening. And then she also held in-person hours as well to basically try to be there for whatever the students' needs were in that course. This 7 weeks, we did a pilot intro stats course, and that I did that one face-to-face, and I also had an embedded learning assistant in that course as well. I had students do a weekly email check-in. So on Sunday nights, they had a form that they had to fill out. And on that form, they would tell me, how much time they had spent studying, how much time they spent getting help, what the last assignment was that they completed. They had to tell me a concept from the week that they understood best and a concept that they still had questions on. And so they had to write that out for me. And then right after that, they had to say, well, when are you going to meet for assistance? Because it was very rare that they didn't still have a question on something. So it's still leading them towards help seeking. If there's something you have a question on, then the next thing is, well, if you have questions or if this concept was really confusing, what are we going to do to clear up the confusion? What are we going to do to get your question answered? So the next question was, so when are you going to meet for help? Are you going to meet with me or are you going to meet with the learning assistant? And when is best for you to meet, with the Calendly link right there for them to go ahead and schedule a help session, again, pushing them towards the help seeking. And so when I would read those responses, then on Mondays and Tuesdays, I would go and follow up based on what they said. Sometimes they'd ask the question right there and it was a quick answer. And I would just go in and respond right to the student. But to me, that was still help seeking. You asked the question in the form, I read the form, and then just went to you and sent you a response. Others, if it was something bigger, hey, I got your check-in. Let's talk about this. What's a good day for you to meet? Here again, and I push the Calendly link. Look on here and grab an appointment. If none of these times work, send me an alternative time and I'll try to work with you. But again, checking in with students, keeping a hand on them and pushing them towards help seeking. We have to keep a pretty standard syllabus within the departments. I call it a syllabus addendum. I post the standard one, but the one that I really, push for students and the one that we talk about and go over is the equity, what I call the equity-minded one. And I found this a couple years back during the pandemic from the Center for Center for Urban Equity, I believe, and there's over there at USC. And it just kind of changes the focus of the syllabus and the language of the syllabus. All that technical academic language is no longer in the syllabus. The syllabus the addendum really reads very conversational and uses very inclusive language. And the syllabus starts off with the focus on help. So it starts off with me, my availability, when and how they can get help. Started off with our math center, where they can go and how they can get help and how they sign up there. And then it talked about non-academic help services, such as our counseling, our food pantry, what we called our Helping Hands Fund, which was emergency financial relief. So I think the entire first page of the syllabus was all about help. Then after that, it was talking about, just the flow of the course and the classroom culture. And then I think it was page 3 where we talked about that technical stuff. Not that it's not important, but again, it's like how are we going to support you? What's our classroom culture? And then, okay, tests count this percent, quizzes count this percent, and here are your due dates and so forth. Okay, DEI or DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is a big deal for me. And, it shows when you look at anything that I put out for students in the classroom. So when I do my presentations for students, I like for them to see themselves represented. And so I am very intentional about making sure that the things that I showcase in class reflect the students that I have in front of me. Okay, and lastly, I try to give students voice and agency. I'm thinking of, the student-faculty relationship as a partnership. And so trying to give them some input as much as possible to help promote engagement and sense of community. And so, we know that we have these student surveys at the end of the semester, but when they do those faculty evaluations or those course evaluations, there's nothing we can do with that information to help those students when we don't get that feedback until the end of the semester. And so I use a start, stop, continue survey. We've switched to 7-week 7-week semesters at Chat State. So we used to have 15-week classes. 2 years ago, we switched to 7-week classes. So within, the fall semester, we had 2 sets of 2 7-week semesters. And so right after test 1, I gave the students a start, stop, continue survey. Hey, what's going on in the class, or something that's not happening that you think would help your learning that I should start doing? What's something that's happening in the class that's really not helpful for you at all that you would like me to stop or modify? What's something that's happening in the class that's really pretty helpful that we should definitely continue? And then I really take that information and try my best, even when some of the things are a little bit outlandish or just out of my control. I try to find something in those surveys that I can come back and incorporate for those students immediately to let them know that I truly am listening and taking into account what they're saying, and that it's not just something for me to give them and then put the stack of papers away, and never, never do anything with them, which is how most of them feel about the end of course evaluations. Okay. And so, nothing's perfect, things take time. But I feel that, with these strategies, it did help students with that sense of belonging, with this idea of professorial concern, that it did send the message that, I cared, that they belong, and, that I was there as a source of support. And so the biggest thing was that I saw more students during student support hours than any previous semester. And I had a decrease in my DWF rates in my online courses. So some of the data here for you, I went back through my Calendly appointment list and saw that over this academic year, so this is fall 22 and spring 23, that I had 54 Calendly appointments scheduled. And then this semester I was back face to face. And so, I do still host the drop-in office hours and 6 drop-ins. Okay, so now out of those 54 appointments that were scheduled, I did have 7 people that were a no-show. And that was 33 different students who accounted for those 54 scheduled appointments plus the 6 drop-ins. Okay, so now you look at that and you're like, well, but compare that to spring of 22, where I had 2 students. So the entire semester, I had 2 students actually meet with me for help. Now, I had a couple that asked questions through email, and I didn't actually track that. But as far as, meeting for help during student support hours, I had 2 students. I taught in the summer. Over the summer, I didn't have any students meet with me during student support hours. So to go from 2 to 60, I'm thrilled. Also, again, pushing students when you can't meet with me, I do push them towards our math center because that's what our math center is for. So I asked the data from our math lab director, hey, can you give me the spreadsheet on my students that went to the math center for support this year? So 109 visits to the math center for support, and it was 46 of my students that accounted for those 109 visits. And that's the thing, if we can get them to go and get the help, then we know they'll go back. It's just getting them in the door that first time. Okay, with the learning assistant that I had in the fall, had 9 student scheduled appointments with the learning assistant. And so 4 of them met with her in the lab for face-to-face appointments, and 5 of those appointments were virtual. And then my learning assistant that was face-to-face with me this time, we only had 1 student that scheduled an appointment outside of class. But this one was a little bit different. In the face-to-face environment, the learning assistant was right there in the class with us. And so he helped and worked with students. It's just he helped them right there in the class setting. And I feel like most of them got the help they needed right there in class, either a little bit before class, right after class, or doing. And so there really wasn't the need to meet with him. And then they were the ones that accounted for the drop-ins in my office. And so there really was less of a need to meet with him outside of the classroom. But he did have one that scheduled an appointment this semester. Just some notes from the students, and I highlighted the parts that specifically mentioned, help or support or resources or encouragement or assistance. So this was an email from a student, and so these either came from, these are emails. So provided what was needed, and then this student commented on, help, me helping them and encouraging, them to go to tutoring. And so that was the point, trying to increase help seeking, trying to, get students to come to us for help. Again, another one, thanking for the help and support, talking about the resources that were provided, and talking about, hey, going to the math center and making use of that support there. Again, this third one, talking about opportunities for assistance. And, this student didn't pass, but he did say, he didn't pass, but no one can't say it wasn't because he didn't have enough support there. Second page, support. Our learning assistant's name was Alex. So appreciated having that embedded assistance there, help. And this person had gone to the math center, and another student there shouting out how friendly and helpful the learning assistant was. Chance to look at that. And then lastly, this one came from, this was one of my students this semester. And this just what we teach students about growth mindset. Felt like, this student just summed it up here. On their test, their first question, I asked them to just tell me about any anxiety they're feeling or anything like that before they take the test. I think it was in my psych perspectives class in my doctoral program that talked about a study that had been done for students having math test anxiety. And the results of the study was that if you have students write about the anxiety before testing, it improved their test grades. So this is my first time trying it. As soon as I heard it, I went back to the test and immediately threw this question on there. And so for test one, it really just says, hey, just tell me if you're feeling any anxiety, how, are you feeling prepared or whatever. But after test one, I did ask them, how do you feel in test one compared to test two? And then this was the last test that they took. So it had a few more questions. But the student was saying, they changed their study strategies completely. They, were never really good at math. And, they were reluctant to come for help. Now, they didn't identify this wise woman. Okay, so we don't know her identity, but there was this wise woman that they talked to when they were talking about being embarrassed. And some of you said, yeah, students feel embarrassed about coming for help. And there was this wise woman that said, pretty much what's more embarrassing, not asking for help and you need it and scoring a 10, or, coming for help and getting the help that you need and basically scoring this A on this last test. And so we basically moved this student. Student had scored a 50 something on their first test to this A on their last test, because they did come in a panic about test one. Oh my God, I'm going to fail this test. And we said, hey, you don't fail this class. You don't have to fail this class. You need to adjust your strategies and make coming for help a regular part of what you do. And that the student did that. They had a standing appointment with me after test one, either on Tuesdays or Thursdays. That's what worked best with their schedule. And so they had two standing appointments. They had a standing appointment with me, and then they had a standing appointment with the math center. And then those were the 2 days. So if they met with me on Tuesday, they were in the math center on Thursday. Or if they, based on what was due that week, if they met with me on Thursday, they were in the math center on Tuesday. And they went from failing to passing. And, they told me, and the math center staff told me too, that when this student finished this test and got their score, they cried, in the lab. They were so happy, so relieved, and so proud. And they called me, left me a voice message, sent me an email as well. Just thrilled to see, what they could do. When you do change your strategies, you don't give up, and, you make help seeking a part of what you're doing. Okay. So if any of you found any of this useful, if you will share any strategy that you feel might be useful and how you think it might help your students. I see some messages here, so let me read and catch up. How many minutes were in the Calendly appointment? So my Calendly appointments were set for 30 minutes, but if a student wanted to do a back-to-back, they could. And then if I didn't have someone scheduled right behind someone and they ran over time, then I didn't, say, hey, your 30 minutes are up. But they were initially scheduled for 30 minutes. So using Teams, I just started using Teams for the first time with this intro stats class that we did, because they had documents and everything to share, and they had a team project. And, a colleague said just be easier to host all that in Teams. And so I might be a Teams convert. I had good success with Teams, and good. You're right. You're at Southwest, so thank you. Email check-ins, okay. Do we have all math classes meeting only 7 weeks? So from Calculus 1 up, we were able to fight for them to stay 15 weeks. The 3-2-1 strategy, 3 things you learn, 2 things you will share, 1 thing you want to learn more about. I've heard of that. I haven't tried it, but thank you. Write that down. Okay, required tutoring on essay. Got to go before taking a quiz. Okay, good. I have not tracked the percent of students who utilized the student support hours and who successfully complete the course. But I can certainly do that. I have all the data. I just need to turn it into a percent. And I think that's good. So I appreciate that. And I'll add that to the slides for whenever my next presentation is. So my next steps, I shared with you that we just completed an OER introductory stats course, and of course the things here about belonging and so forth, we use in those courses. I'm big with professional learning, particularly anything that has anything to do with teaching and learning. So I've been watching webinars for this Hawks Learning series. I participated in AQ's Effective Teaching Practices course. I got that credential. And I just completed and facilitated their Fostering a Culture of Belonging. I did a Lumen Circle for effective online teaching and just completed one this semester for teaching with OER. I read student end of course evaluations. I've been doing more with getting their feedback, throughout the course. And when I find something that works, I try to stick with it. So I'll open it up again for any questions that you may have.
We do have one question. What are the differences between on-campus and online students seeking help behaviors?
What are the difference between on-campus? I'm sorry, repeat it again for me.
Sure. What are the differences between on-campus and online students seeking help behaviors?
Most of the time, I've found that it's easier to get the students who are on campus to get help, or you just kind of force the help upon them. When you have them right there in class, and that's been one of the reasons. And I know it's different, at different institutions, but we do have a supervisor that asks, when he is making the schedule, is there anything you want, anything I should know, any preferences that you have? And so I'm not shy about, just putting them out there. And one of the things that I like to request is not having back-to-back classes. And the reason is because a good time to get to students, particularly the ones who work and the ones who are not going to come back after they leave, is to be available to them right before class and right after class. And I can't do that if I'm just coming out of class before my class, or I have to rush off to the next class after that class. And so with the students that are there face to face, I try to keep that time right before class available to them. So the ones who can stay right after, or the ones who can come a little bit earlier, can get that quick kind of help for you. And then the ones who don't have to leave, for our classes that are in the same building with the Math Center, I'll just walk them right over there to the Math Center. We hop on, the computer, we go to a table and we sit down and we just do it right there rather than taking them back to my office. Or if we're in the other building and we leave, it's just like, I've had days where I'm like the little mother duck, and, the little ducklings are behind me. So I have a trail of students just following me. So when they're right there in front of you, it's easier to get them the supports that are right there on campus. It's a lot harder sometimes to pin down, the online students. Most of the time they're taking the online classes because they don't have the set time, usually because of work obligations, to be in a certain class at a certain hour. And so, it's harder to pin them down and say, hey, come meet with me on this day or at this time. And it's only until they kind of get themselves in trouble, or, they're at that point, or like the student who, you couldn't pin her down, but then after she got that 50, then it's like, okay, well, I actually can be pinned down. And we made it work on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that's what I think the big difference is. It's easier to get your hands on the ones that are there right in front of you, as opposed to the ones that are online. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. We do have other questions. How do you encourage students in an online course to keep their cameras on throughout the lecture?
So for us, we have the face-to-face courses. We have what we call virtual courses, and then we have online. So online, the virtual courses are the ones where it's a synchronous course, but it's just remote. And when I taught during the COVID time, when we were not on campus, I just told them, if you're not on camera, it's like you're not here. And I said, because you can't hide if we were in a face-to-face course. So the only difference between this and a face-to-face course is that we're not in the same room together. But other than that, you're to treat this just like you would, being in a face-to-face course. It's a synchronous course. And so I didn't have, many instances. You always have one or two. And, I repeated myself that first week. And after that, I didn't. And so then once I said, okay, to make this stick, it's less impactful if you wait to the end. So every week I would give an attendance grade. And when they lost those points, and as, hey, what happened here? Well, you weren't on camera. And everything was recorded. And and so I see that they didn't tell us that we could not do that. And so that's what happened. If you have a difficult home situation, you can always blur your background. And so they were the trade-off is a difficult home situation when they're off camera. I know for certain you have less attention, less engagement. They turn the camera on and then they leave. So it's like, well, do you want the success, or do you have that student that has that one student that may have the difficult home situation? If they share that with you, then you can make exception. But generally, that has not been the issue. So I wouldn't want to sacrifice the whole class for the one or two students that may have a difficult situation, when I know for a fact that the engagement plummets when you allow the cameras to be off. So that's how I handled that. Now, the classes that I had for the fall were fully online, so they are asynchronous classes. So there was not the issue of having the cameras on versus having the cameras off.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We do have one other question. Do you
Sure.
provide extra credit points as incentive for students who seek assistance?
So I tried that once with the calculus group, and it didn't make the participation any more or any less. And so I just stopped. It's, your credit is coming. You're coming for, and I know people say, well, incentivize it, that might make them come and that sort of thing. And I agree, but I just was so happy to have them come once I switched to Calendly and all that I just was like, okay, just keep pushing this. And I actually didn't even think to go back and revisit, the idea of assigning any additional points to it or anything.
Thank you. Do you have any closing remarks for us?
No, just thank you all for being here. Thank you for I was reading the last couple of comments in the chat. Thank you for the ideas that were shared and the suggestions, and thank you for the comments that were mentioned. There's my contact information if anybody wants to connect outside. I'll flip that back in just a second, but I did want to show you, hold on, maybe it's here. The references that are here, there is the information to the full study from Dr. China on the investigating he was looking at college algebra students. If any of you, for the equity-minded syllabus, there was a template that was there. If you're not familiar with Calendly, there's the web address for that. If you've never participated in a Lubin circle or did anything with AQ, there are those websites there. I've found them, and my colleagues have found them to be very useful. So that's there. I just wanted to make sure I shared that page with you. But there's my contact information again. Thank you all for participating, and hopefully I'll see you all. Our paths will cross again.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Professor Crenshaw, for all of this great information, and thank you all for attending today. We will be emailing you a link to view the recording of this webinar once it's available. If you or any of your fellow instructors are interested in presenting for our Learning and Growing webinar series, please submit your proposals to the Learning and Growing website, which I'm going to go ahead and link in the chat now for easy access. And these free webinars are brought to you by Hawks Learning, an innovative educational courseware company. To learn more about our mastery-based course materials and how Hawks can enhance your learning outcomes for you and your students, please visit hawkslearning.com. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you all for attending today's webinar.
Bye.